How's it going, folks? It's Juno here. I think we need to start being more honest about who our masters are. Your ego is highly unlikely to allow you to speak to yourself honestly and acknowledge that you are a slave to many things. You want to believe that you are the center of your world, that you can control everything that comes into your being, into your substance, into your realm, into your dominion. But I think the truth is that when you're able to analyze what influences you, you begin to realize that you are actually a slave to many things. And a lot of the power of that slavery is your ignorance to it. And because you don't give it a name, you're not able to define it in any meaningful way. I think a hugely productive step would be for everyone to think carefully about what they're a slave to, and to try and be honest with themselves in understanding what has mastery over them. I think I talk a lot on this channel about Stoic philosophy, and I definitely believe it's been one of the most productive schools of thought in terms of bringing some semblance of control into your life, maybe feeling a little more fulfilled, a little more in touch with reality, and trying to affect real change that lasts, has longevity, can be sustained. One of the most important things then is to try and understand what really directs and motivates you. If your will was focused and was able to be acted upon, then every time you wanted something, you would be able to formulate a strategy with which to attain that thing you wanted. And you'd be able to maintain your focus on that thing until you completed all the steps required for you to attain it. Now, for most people, that simply doesn't happen. And I think it's important to ask yourself why. I think a great deal of that is because if you're only productive for yourself, that doesn't benefit people other than you very much. And if you can be co-opted and distracted into waylaying your own projects and interests and working on the behalf of others, then that is a very important thing for them to begin to try and utilize. I would be greatly improved in my position if I can find a way of making people work in my interest for me. You see, people who talk about financial freedom often speak about having multiple revenue streams or sources of income, but ultimately almost all of these rely on other people being co-opted into providing those streams of income for them, be it through some form of multi-level marketing, for example, or passive income through intellectual property, which requires a customer base to continually purchase from that, even if no more content's being produced. So there needs to be a continual usage and utility of the original idea so that licenses and royalties can be extracted from it. So other people basically need to be continually utilizing your IP so that in every new iteration, every new use that's found for it by other people, you're still generating further income. And so in all these ways, really what's going on is they're trying to discover avenues with which other people can make money for them. And if we use money as a good indicator and a metric of usefulness, we can see that one person their usefulness is being utilized by another. So they're being used. And when you realize that there are many things that you're influenced by that you think you want, or that you maybe have some compulsion to follow, you're actually becoming a slave to that thing. That thing has mastery over you. And there are some basic and instinctual ones which are quite easy to grab control over. And there are some more subtle ones that perhaps you're not fully aware of, that many people spend their whole lives trying to figure out. I think when people talk about having a mental breakdown, very often I wonder if it's that they're faced with a problem that's simply bigger than they are, or outside of their frame of reference, and feel completely unable to handle the size of the task in front of them. And because they can only think in maybe certain ways, they have no way of breaking down that problem into completable units. They just continually try and attack the whole thing and find they make no progress and feel overwhelmed. And I wonder if the source of many mental breakdowns perhaps is exactly that. Maybe the depression that many people feel is perhaps a hangover of maybe things they didn't resolve in their initial development and then never had the tools to approach in their adulthood. But my speculation about mental health aside, I certainly think there's a lot of value to be found in trying to analyze yourself and wonder, be honest with yourself about the things that have mastery over you. Be it, your sexual instincts, be it your need for security, be it your drive for social status, be it your insecurities, anything that makes you feel like it puts you in a state of anxiety. Things that you may feel or have always applied value to, but actually in reality affect your life very little, but you can't help on some level but be heavily influenced by your emotions towards those things. And the Stoic philosophers definitely had a lot to say on that. They definitely had a lot to say about trying to be liberated from those things, or trying to be a master of yourself. And while again it feeds into our ego very much for us all to imagine we really are masters of ourselves, I simply don't think that reflects a true accounting of most people's situations. I think most people are highly dependent on others. They're highly dependent on an integrated system that exists around them. They realise that a threat to that system is a threat to them and their survival. And I think even today you can see there's many instances of people acting in otherwise unreasonable fashion, but then when you you build in the dependency on a system, they act to protect the system that they're in, because they feel that they're exactly dependent on it, even if they don't acknowledge that dependency, because it may make them appear to look weak. But if you did want to have any level of real control over your life, it would have to start with understanding the areas that you've given up control over, the areas where you've succumbed to whatever desire or requirement you felt you had in the past, and have lost a grip over what you could have had instead. So you sacrificed something for something else, but it was a bad call, and you should go back and undo that, but you've already committed to it. I think one of the biggest parts of that is seeming a fool, seeming like you have bad judgment, thinking that people will think differently about you if you admit you're wrong. And I'm going to tell you, they will think differently about you. That is exactly what's going to happen. They will think that you are as imperfect as they are, rather than infallible. They will think that if there's somebody else out there who doesn't make mistakes or doesn't admit to them, then surely they must be more qualified or more trustworthy than you are, because you clearly make mistakes. They will think all these things, that your anxiety around your image is absolutely deserved, but that shouldn't stop you from doing the right thing. That shouldn't stop you from making the better call, which is 99% of the time appreciating that you don't know and expressing that you don't know is a much more efficient route to finally knowing than pretending you do. And there's many people in positions of great authority that don't know what they're doing, but the people who can help put them in those positions think they do. They think that person knows what they're doing, and that's how they get there. And everybody suffers for that. There's nobody who wins in that scenario. Only the person who's kind of tricked their way into that position, but they were only competing against people doing the exactly same thing. So really, there's no loss in them having it over somebody else, because that's exactly the environment that produces those kinds of people. And what we want those environments to fail. And we want the people invested in those environments and systems to fail too, because they're contributing to it. And what we do want is we want systems and environments that promote honesty and the most efficient, optimal path to genuine learning, genuine discovery, and genuine progression and development, to be the ones that have access to the most resources. And they can't do that if other systems that are not optimal in those fields are competing for those resources. They can compete at a very high level, maybe they can outcompete others, but there will come a point where there's a critical mass where if simply so many and so large are allowed to continue being supported, being put on life support and kept in the game, they will just through pure numbers, they will erode the available resources enough to stifle and even perhaps cause the decline of the genuinely beneficial systems. So yeah, that's something I think that we should all be looking into. We should all be thinking about. If we could be honest about where we are slaves and what has mastery over us, then we may be able to begin unpicking the power those things have. And when we name it and we show it, even just to ourselves, then we're aware of it. And I think a lot of people realize this on some level, but instead of helping everyone, what they want to do instead is utilize that power for themselves. And I can see why. It's a very attractive thing to do. It's a very dominant thing to do. You perceive a weakness in somebody else, but rather than destroying them, you sap them. You parasite off them instead through the weakness, and that benefits you on a continual basis for much longer. You can extract much more rather than just destroying them in one go and removing that competitor. It's like, does the predator really want to kill all the prey? Not really. In an ideal situation, they want to reach an equilibrium where the prey continues grazing, 20 hours a day to collect all that biological food matter to extract the nutrition, because then 5 minutes is all it takes for the predator to kill the prey. It's able to spend all the rest of its time doing something else, and it's got all that nutritional value, or the vast majority of it. So you don't necessarily want to kill all the prey. The best predators want to keep a good turnover of prey going, because the prey are what make the predator. If the prey went out there farming the pasture and extracting that nutrition from it with all of their time, then that's something the predator would have to do instead, and that's simply less efficient for them. So they want to keep the prey going. They want to keep a system that promotes the production of prey animals, and they want to extract the optimum amount to reach an equilibrium where they can have a large enough group that they maintain dominance and genetic diversity, but also are able to maintain the number of prey animals that are around and available. And that's exactly what happens with people who begin to understand this principle. Is instead of trying to point out to people how the other people are not in control and how other things have mastery over them, they simply try and co-opt that mastery for themselves. So if you are a slave to your senses, if you love to eat, if you love to have sex, if you love to listen to music, if you love to do all these things where you're being stimulated in some way, but not in a productive or educational way, not in a way that produces anything, it's just stimulation for the sense for amusement or enjoyment, then that can be farmed. That can be used to access a prey animal inside you, which is to extract your labor or to extract something else from you, your money or whatever it is. And if you're going to have these things that have mastery over you, they will be used but as levers by others to get those things out of you when they want them. If you want status, there'll be people who will take that desire and will use it against you, and they will do so from a position of genuinely helping, or the appearance of genuine assistance. But once they've clocked that that's what you're about and that's what you want the promotion, or you want a fancy title or something, then they will know that that's the carrot they have to dangle for you, and they'll just continually do it as long as you're willing to jump through hoops for that carrot on a stick. They will just continually dangle that carrot for you, and they will get you to jump all the hoops they need. And it's got nothing to do with what you want, and it's got everything to do with what they want. But you can stop that right now by being honest with yourself about what it is you want, what has mastery over you, what is it that you're weak to, and then you can actually begin to stop people using that against you. Because the minute you're honest and aware of it, it'll become so much more obvious when somebody else tries to use it to get you to do something they want. And in fact, what you can begin to do is you can begin to stop wanting those things, because you'll see the association between you wanting it and bad things happening to you, or you not getting it and people using you with it, will become more clear. And even maybe you'll stop wanting it because you'll know that fulfillment and personal discipline and all these things that you may actually value, the person you want to be maybe doesn't want those things. Right? The person you want to be, even if you're the most materialistic, superficial narcissist, the person you want to be actually doesn't care about money and status and fancy cars or whatever, or women, because in your fantasy he already has them. In your fantasy, the person you want to be already has them, so he doesn't give a shit about them, because they're nothing to him. He's not striving to achieve them, he has achieved them. So even in the most flawed interpretation, the perfect iteration of it, even he doesn't care. You can already be part of that now. Thanks very much for listening, guys. I'll catch you around.